You're listening to the Tony Kennett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome back to the Tony Kennett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. We were on the air earlier today to break the news that Attorney General Pam Bondi had been canned. And because I made the very stupid and silly promise that if Kristi Noem was canned, I would go live, and then if Pam Bondi was canned, that I would go live, we rushed to hop onto the air amid all of these media reports just to get a confirmation as we were turning the show over to live from the President of the United States on Truth Social, who announced, Pam Bondi, Pam Bondi is a great American patriot and a loyal friend who faithfully served as my Attorney General over the past year. Pam did a tremendous job overseeing a massive crackdown in crime across our country, with murders plummeting to their lowest level since 1900. That is objectively true. We love Pam, and she will be transitioning to a much-needed and important new job in the private sector to be announced at a date in the near future. And this would be the individual who is taking her place in the meantime. Our Deputy Attorney General, a very talented and respected legal mind, Todd Blanche, will step in to serve as Acting Attorney General. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. And this took the vast media world by storm because you might remember a few of us out here in the wide political sphere said that it was Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi who were on thin ice. And that brings us to the question that a lot of you have asked earlier today. There were suspicions galore as to what it was that finally did Pam Bondi in. Because like with Kristi Noem, there was in fact a straw that broke the camel's back. There was a final thing that pushed Trump a little bit too far and ended up resulting in her getting the monopoly boot. So what is this? Before we talk about that, it's fair to let the Attorney General outgoing of the United States, Pam Bondi, in her statement, say her fond farewells because the president said she's going to the private sector. She doesn't announce here where she's going, but here's the statement from Pam Bondi. Quote, over the next month, I will be working tirelessly to transition the office of Attorney General to the amazing Todd Blanche before moving to an important private sector role. You know. Ooh. That I am thrilled about, and where I will continue fighting for President Trump and this administration. Leading President Trump's historic and highly successful efforts to make America safer and more secure has been the honor of a lifetime and easily the most consequential first year of the Department of Justice in American history. Since February 2025, we have secured the lowest murder rate in 125 years, secured first ever terrorism convictions against members of Antifa, shattered domestic and transnational gangs across the country, and taken custody of more than 90 key cartel figures and won 24 favorable rulings at the Supreme Court. I remain eternally grateful for the trust that President Trump placed in me to make America safe again. All right, the second to last paragraph where she lists her accomplishments, those are absolutely, unequivocally, without a doubt, accomplishments for Attorney General Pam Bondi. And those aren't to be taken lightly. However, this, like with Kristi Noem, who did a lot of excellent things for the United States, who inherited what many would consider to be a serious mess, and while doing a lot of really good things, also on matters that are important to the president's blitz maverick administration style strategy, which is where every single secretary, every single day, is taking part in all of these combined, coordinated efforts to carry out the desires of the President of the United States. This is where Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi really fell a little bit flat on the face. And by this I mean both Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi had moments, several of them, where they put themselves out in front of the American people for next to no reason whatsoever and humiliated themselves and humiliated the President of the United States. So with Kristi Noem, this would be when she got out in front of the country and before the individuals who were under investigation, before the individuals who were killed while assaulting ICE agents, who had refused to cooperate and putting themselves in a really rough situation, whether we're talking about Renee Good, Alex Preddy in this case, Pam Bondi got out immediately, not Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem got out immediately and was judge, jury, and executioner right away. Didn't look good. Pam Bondi back in February, announced, hey, I've promised all of this Epstein file stuff, brought the influencers out in front of the White House, gave them all of the fancy super duper binders that were just phase one of the file release. And it turned out there was essentially nothing there that we didn't already know. That's a problem. But that wasn't what did both of them in. What did Kristi Noem in as the Secretary of Homeland Security was going before Congress and in front of, or should I say to, Senator Kennedy of Louisiana when he asked her, there's a $144 million payment. This big advertising campaign. Sorry, that voice wasn't very good. Senator Kennedy's not one of mine. This huge hundreds of millions of dollars ad campaign, Secretary Noem. Did Trump approve this? Or did you just make a hundreds of millions of dollar purchase with your budget for an ad campaign of you riding around in tight jeans on horseback? And Noem said, well, no, Trump totally approved it. You don't do that. You don't put words in the President of the United States' mouth. That is one big, large no-no. And here we are. It looks like this is the exact same thing that happened with Attorney General Pam Bondi. So yes, though Pam Bondi got out in front of the country and had the big, huge Epstein file snafu, though a lot of the country was frustrated with the lack of prosecution that took place of either active or former members of Congress or the administration, or federal officials like Judge James Boasberg, who has overtly and explicitly and clearly violated federal law by not only wiretapping United States senators without their consent or knowledge, but also forbade AT&T and Verizon from notifying senators that they were violating federal law in tapping and recording their communications and locations. Pam Bondi wasn't even able to get Attorney General Letitia James indicted. That's a problem. But it's not that mediocre, or I should say that mediocrity, that appears to have been what finally got her in a rather rough spot. According to the Daily Mail, and again, the Daily Mail has some decent investigative reports, whether we're talking about maybe Kristi Noem's husband and his large inflatable balloons he shoved into his shirt, or whether we are talking about the flip side, the bad side of the Daily Mail, which is where they made a lot of really dumb allegations about the Charlie Kirk assassination investigation and ended up having to issue a retraction. The Daily Mail's got some good and some bad, so take this with a grain of salt, although there appear to be some corroborating details right now. Attorney General Pam Bondi may have finally had the straw that broke the camel's back when the President of the United States told her last night he was unhappy that her office, in fact, maybe Pam Bondi directly, had leaked details either to Eric Swalwell or just leaked details in general to an untrustworthy contact regarding the Department of Justice's or the Department of Homeland Security's investigations into Representative Eric Swalwell of California. The same Representative Eric Swalwell who got a little close to Fang Fang, the Chinese spy. And that's what this is about. This very same Christine Fang Chinese spy relationship investigation. Pam Bondi going out and maybe leaking details. That's according to the Daily Mail. There's a Wall Street Journal reporter who seems to be corroborating some of this. We don't know for sure yet, so we're going to hang on there. It appears that this could be, at least in a pattern line, the same kind of thing that got Kristi Noem given the boot. Now, what's kind of interesting here is that last night, before the president's address, it was not Pam Bondi who was suspected of getting canned, even though that's what individuals like yours truly had predicted. I thought it was going to be Kristi Noem and then Pam Bondi, and if there's anyone else in the administration that's on somewhat thin ice, it's Kash Patel. But in the meantime, right now, I believed that Pam Bondi and Noem were not going to make it through the midterm. Well, here we are. It's April. Now, what was the main rumor that was flying around last night? It was that Tulsi Gabbard was going to be getting the axe, not Attorney General Pam Bondi. Well, I probably shouldn't do this. It's not very, tease radio newsworthy, but I'm just not going to lead you along. Tulsi Gabbard is in fact staying. Because in addition to the fact that Tulsi Gabbard has not personally humiliated the president by putting words in his mouth or by ruining something very blatant that's a very big boo-boo, she also doesn't embarrass herself in public. Neither does Susie Wiles. Neither does Secretary Brooke Rollins of Agriculture. Neither does Linda McMahon of the Department of Education. And that matters. Radio crew, we're going to send you guys off to the commercial break. We're going to continue on the live stream and dive into this a little bit. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, again, Pam Bondi being fired, the reason that she was really on thin ice to begin with, before we get to the Tulsi Gabbard stuff, is because when Tulsi Gabbard steps out in front of the public eye and goes to a congressional committee hearing, for example, no matter what the subject is, whether it's the Iran war, Operation Epic Fury stuff, and she's having some kind of an argument, Tulsi Gabbard will go in front of committee and she'll act like this.
So the assessment of the intelligence community is that Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated by last summer's airstrikes.
Yes.
In the opening statement you submitted to the committee last night also stated, quote, there has been no effort since then to try to rebuild their enrichment capability, end quote, correct?
That's right.
And that's the assessment of the intelligence community.
Yes.
The White House stated on March 1st of this year that this war was launched.
Simple yes or no questions, calm. And by the way, she does get into some explanation a little bit later on in her testimony. She'll kind of disagree or frame things differently. She'll have this conversation.
Determination based on a collection and volume
You're here
of
to be
information and
timely.
intelligence that he is provided with.
You're here.
Even when she is cut off, even when she is treated disrespectfully, you do not see her go into this big fist fight style attitude. Now, when Kristi Noem in the DHS or Pam Bondi would be treated this way.
Let me stop for a minute.
I'm talking.
If they're not privileged,
Quiet.
don't yell at me. If they're not
Mr. Chairman, would you stop the clock? This is on your time. It's not on Mr. Goldman.
they're not
Even though
privileged,
you used your improper redacted.
That's not useful. It's not useful. It's not useful. This was all Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem did. They were podium Barbies who would get out in front and they would do one of two things. Number one, they would, whenever asked a question, they would be like sycophantic towards President Trump in a way that really doesn't bear a lot of fruit. Now, Trump will tell you he's got an ego. It's one of the things we talked about yesterday before the president's address. But when the president is only hearing from you, Trump is like really great and he's amazing and like the president's so great in this administration and the president he believes and everyone is going to be, and the president, he doesn't care for that. What he wants is what American people want, results. Trump has been this way since it was all the way back to The Apprentice. American people, they want results. They want it in front of them in their hands. That's been his thing for a long dang time. And that's what the American people want. They don't want a lot of promises and then not delivering on those promises. So this brings us to, again, before we get to Tulsi Gabbard and why she's staying, why is Todd Blanche picking up the slack in the meantime? And by the way, not an unlikely chance that Todd Blanche is going to be the permanent replacement. I know that there are a lot of rumors flying around, and we'll get to some of those, about who's replacing Pam Bondi. But Todd Blanche in the short term taking over, one of the reasons that the man is taking over is because when he's asked certain questions, he doesn't get out there and say just wild whack-a-mole wackadoodle stuff, even in tense moments.
You saw the governor and the mayor actively encouraging criminals to go out on the street and impede ICE. That is not allowed under our law. When a federal officer is out doing their job, they have to be allowed to do their jobs. And the fact that we had to stand up and tell a mayor, that we had to stand up and tell a governor to stop encouraging the folks that are out there running around trying to stop ICE, to stop encouraging them, when what they really should be doing is helping their fellow federal officers, is something that's horrible. But listen, no matter who you are, whether you're a governor, a mayor, or somebody out there on the streets assaulting ICE, you cannot, under federal law, you cannot impede a federal officer doing their job.
That is Deputy Attorney General and soon-to-be acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. That's calm. That is the airline pilot Americans want. That is the disappointed parent. That is no ifs, ands, buts, coconuts. We're not futzing around. We're not goofing around. We're not playing silly games. Making it very clear right off the top of the bat, President Trump likes that. So far, former Senator, now Secretary of Homeland Security, Markwayne Mullin, former Senator of Oklahoma, exact same way. The exact same kind of behavior. Americans like that. Americans want that. That's just the truth, and that is just the way it is. All right, now that the radio crew is back with us from commercial break, let's dive into where we're actually going from here. So we have, of course, the regard of Eric Swalwell. Let's talk a little bit about who's going to be replacing Pam Bondi in the long term. There is a non-zero chance that it could be the current director of the EPA, Lee Zeldin, the deregulator himself. The opposite of Warren G, if you don't mind the pun there. Not the regulator, the deregulator. And again, Lee Zeldin actually comes forward, and at least in the last cabinet meeting, talking about accomplishing the president's goals. And when the president pitches over to Lee Zeldin and says, hey, what's going on? How are things going on kind of on the cabinet role inside of things? You get a couple of responses that, again, are clear and they're to the point and they're that same kind of attitude. There's a huge legal expertise and knowledge there.
We're taking major steps in today's announcement to make America healthy again. I'm pleased to announce a landmark set of actions by EPA to safeguard the nation's drinking water from microplastics, pharmaceuticals, forever chemicals, and dozens of other contaminants.
This is a man who spends his entire life fighting legal battles, both against the corporate interest lobby group and also against the far left super duper climate nonsense groups. He's a pretty decent pick, and he's definitely up for consideration. Also, the current DC attorney, Jeanine Pirro. I know that she has definitely got a little bit of the apple of the president's eye because she gets out there and she fights without mincing a lot of words, without making a lot of missteps. It is something that is appreciated about her. Now, this next part I just find a little humorous because I really like the man. Mike Davis of the Article 3 Project has also been floated. Very, very competent lawyer. Benny Johnson called for that earlier today. And the reason I bring up Benny Johnson's call for Mike Davis, one of many that I saw, is that Mike Davis, not being an idiot and understanding that Attorney General is probably the worst job in the Capitol, responded with, and I quote, hell, period, no, period, end quote. I absolutely and wholeheartedly agree. So it's not going to be Mike Davis. Now, this brings us over to the other rumors. So the Guardian had reported that Tulsi Gabbard was the one that was leaving because, see, she gave a testimony, the one that I played a clip from a couple of minutes ago, in which it wasn't entirely super duper favorable. She answered a bunch of yes and no questions and then talked about the intelligence that was given to the president of the United States. And she's totally leaving. She's out of here. This is, according to the Guardian, quote, Donald Trump has privately asked cabinet members in recent weeks whether he should replace his director of national intelligence, his DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, venting frustration that she shielded a former deputy who undercut his rationale for war with Iran. That's the Joe Kent accusation, according to two people briefed on the discussions. So these are not two people who were near the discussions. These are not two people who were there when Trump's going, and I don't like Tulsi, and also there's this Joe Kent guy. I don't even know why I have Tulsi, and also I really don't like the fact that the grass outside the White House is green. We could make it gold. What's going on? Not even two people who were listening there going, write that down, write that down. No, these are two people who later were supposedly told, like a teen girl on telephone. So then, like, Janice said that Trump totally was talking about Tulsi Gabbard. Oh my God. And wearing those hair extensions. Can you believe it? That's what the Guardian is citing here. Two people who also spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss private conversations. You would not catch me dead. And I would know because during the controversy surrounding the Heritage Foundations and comments made regarding the Tucker Carlson stuff, I was reached out to by every journalist from the far to the right to the far to the left, some that didn't even speak English, because I work for the Daily Signal, which the Heritage Foundation, which the Daily Signal's started at the Heritage Foundation. So I was getting all these messages and being asked secondhand, third-hand, fourth-hand conversations that I had only heard about from seeing social media posts. And do you know what you do? Sorry, I have no comment. The only real individuals who are making comments like this to The Guardian are those who are just trying to stir things up for fun. And that appears to be the case because President Trump was asked about Tulsi. Yeah, she ain't going anywhere.
We have a lot of great candidates for this.
Do you still have confidence in Tulsi Gabbard, sir?
Yeah, sure I do. Sure. I mean, she's a little bit different in her thought process than me, but that doesn't make somebody not available to serve.
Is she on the same page as you?
I would say that I'm very strong in the fact that I don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Because if they had a nuclear weapon, they'd use it immediately. I think she's probably a little bit softer on that issue, but that's okay. Some people are.
And the president really, genuinely doesn't mind that. I mean, again, his left and right hand are J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, who are rather different on the foreign policy and the economy side of things. So the rapid response, the White House communication account has come out since and slammed this report that Tulsi Gabbard is also next on the block, so I don't think so. In other news, the whole federal judicial circus regarding the Ballroom, the former East Wing crappy office space that was molded over and garbage and cramped and the worst. The office scene with Mr. Incredible at the beginning of The Incredibles is a more spacious and exciting office than those crappy buildings in the East Wing. Well, I have some good news for those of you out there that were fans of the Ballroom project. After a particular judge stepped forward and from the Bush administration, the George Bush appointee, had waltzed forward and said that Congress needed to fund this already funded White House project. Again, a rather strange argument to make, for sure. That being Judge Richard Leon ordering an immediate halt. Now, it appears the Ballroom is totally back on. This first reported by Fox News this afternoon.
Tonight, President Trump's White House Ballroom has received a final approval from a key agency just days after the federal judge ordered a halt to construction. The National Capital Planning Commission approved the construction on federal property today. That commission is chaired by one of President Trump's former lawyers. Today, the judge ruled in favor of a preservationist group that contends the president does not have the power to authorize the project without Congress.
So what Brett Baer is reporting on in this specific point is that the National Capital Planning Commission, which includes Senator Rand Paul, it includes some city officials, some kind of national and federal architecture officials and planning officials, and then a couple of congressmen. Here's how the President of the United States announced this today. It's like, I'd like to thank the hardworking. I always love when he gets what he wants. It's just the fanciful language that flows off of the fingers here. The hardworking commissioners and staff of the National Capital Planning Commission, who just voted overwhelmingly, never seen before, 8-1 to approve the magnificent White House Ballroom, now rising on this hallowed ground. I am pleased to announce that even board member Senator Rand Paul, known as an extraordinarily difficult vote because Rand Paul has, libertarians, voted a strong yes. For more than 150 years, every president has dreamt about having a ballroom or a large stateroom at the White House to accommodate people for grand parties, state visits, and even in the modern day, inaugurations. So again, I do have to side with the President of the United States here, at least on a kind of a moral and analytical level. This is a thing that presidents and the Congress has talked about doing at the White House for a very, very, very long time. A very long time. This has been a goal of the White House. And the East Wing is kind of garbage. And so, again, very, very good stuff there. A definite move forward for the President of the United States. Now, this brings us over to kind of the federal news and the other matters. The Department of Homeland Security looks like it's going to be getting the green light to open. And then there's the Trump address last night. And then there is probably the biggest fraud investigation scandal I've seen in the last couple of years. And I'm not talking about the major, major bust in which the FBI raided homes in California this morning for an insane amount of hospice fraud and Medicare fraud. We're going to kind of push that away just for a second. Radio crew, we're going to send you off to the commercial while we dive into the DHS updates. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the DHS news. So the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, released a kind of joint statement with Thune in which the House made the case that, all right, right now, in order to get funding reopening the Department of Homeland Security and also what appears to be some prodding from the President of the United States, the Speaker of the House has agreed to go along with the Senate 2:30 a.m. voice vote maneuver to fund everything in the Department of Homeland Security except for Immigration Customs Enforcement and Border Patrol. And then ICE and Border Patrol, which, again, ICE is already funded through 2027 to 2029, they're going to get a slight reconciliation measure here in a couple of weeks. Now, again, the win of this for Republicans specifically is that Democrats are not getting a ton of the Democrats are not getting a ton of the super duper special reforms like no administrative warrants that they wanted out of this. And after blustering into the body cameras things and Republicans agreeing, because we all know how well body camera footage with officers of law enforcement work out, Democrats are now trying to take a kind of victory lap after keeping the Department of Homeland Security shut down as long as they did. Chuck Schumer was trying to roll forward with this today. So he released this big tweet talking about how, he stayed steadfast and he didn't cave and he didn't give in, which, while not being true in this instance, he wasn't one of the individuals who did the voice vote along with John Thune at 2:30 in the morning to get some of this stuff through. But Schumer's going to try to take a victory lap anyway because he really, really, really wants everyone in his party to believe that he is standing up to Donald Trump, which no one in his party believes, but that doesn't stop him from taking a little exciting victory lap. Here's Chuckles.
This is now clearly the Johnson shutdown. It's a Republican shutdown. All he had to do was put that bill on the floor, and it would have passed overwhelmingly. So the Republicans are...
First of all, no. There was not support among House Republicans or House Democrats to get that through. Do you know how I know that? I have the X and social media accounts of members of the Progressive Squad. Unless we're talking about Jared Golden from Maine and the more moderate side of the party, that's not remotely true. But again, that's just Chuckles is going about it, trying to make a victory lap out of nothing.
Hardly unified. They're squirming about. Democrats for 3 months, or 3 weeks rather, have been trying to fund all of the other agencies. We're not going to fund a lawless ICE or CPB, but we've been trying to fund TSA. We've been trying to fund Coast Guard. And the Republicans have blocked it repeatedly. So this shutdown is on their back.
Okay, interesting. Now, the other side of the clip that Schumer did not want to air is when Wolf Blitzer and the CNN crew said, well, I know you've been talking about the TSA and all of these issues that have been going on. Aren't you, maybe going to give some credit to the President of the United States for making sure that TSA agents and the DHS, the Coast Guard, FEMA are paid? Going to give them a little bit of credit here?
President Trump's new order, as you know, to pay all Department of Homeland Security employees will provide welcome relief for these workers, especially the TSA workers. Do you give him any credit for that, Senator?
No, we've been trying to do it for 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah, we've been trying to do it for that. No, there have been stopgap measures put in place. Again, the House Republicans put forward a stopgap measure that the Senate ignored. There have been several. Again, Mike Johnson has slung out various bills to the Senate, and various isn't the right word, a plethora, a paddy wagon full of bills, a whole forest's worth of paper of bills on funding to the Senate, to which they have completely ignored it. Now, there are a couple of really, really upset groups about this. So these would be a lot of the Senate Democrats who wanted the government to remain shut down, individuals like Elizabeth Warren, like Bernie Sanders. Very, very unhappy. Also, a lot of House Republicans are unhappy because they don't believe that Speaker Johnson should have went along with this in case the Democrats in the future try to permanently fracture Immigration Customs Enforcement and Border Patrol funding from DHS at all. And Democrats start trying to piecemeal agencies that they like and they don't like from receiving federal funding. So essentially all of the money going to NPR and PBS and none of the money going to Border Patrol or Immigration Customs Enforcement. We got to send the radio crew. We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial. Don't go anywhere. A lot to cover tonight. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
President Trump's new order, as you know, to pay all Department of Homeland Security employees will provide welcome relief for these workers, especially the TSA workers. Do you give him any credit for that, Senator?
No, we've been trying to do it for 3 weeks.
Okay, yeah, no one's listening to Chuck Schumer. The Senate Democrats are already abandoning any kind of line with Chuck. They're trying to do kind of a different bit of dunking right now. And it's not working because Senate Democrats and House Democrats have no vertical. There is other news to cover. So we'll leave Chuckles alone for just a second here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. If you like the show, head over to youtube.com/Daily Signal. Throw a like on the video, subscribe. That really does help us out. Now, the President of the United States had a very big address last night, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I made a bit of a prediction yesterday that because the president, I know this may sound rather silly to some of you, because the president, in talking about his upcoming speech, had said, I'm going to get out there and say I'm the greatest, the super duperest president in the entire world. And that was kind of the claim made by the president of the United States.
And tonight I'm making a little speech at 9 o'clock. And basically I'm going to tell everybody how great I am. What a great job I've done. What a phenomenal job. What a phenomenal job I've done. But seriously, if you
didn't have like Trump doing the actual Trump, voice there. So in this particular instance, I will take a slight moment and say, yeah, whenever Trump makes fun of himself going into a big speech, it ends up being a really good speech. It was an 18-minute and 30-second address, if you include the time that it took for him to walk up to the podium. And what did he talk about? He talked about the Iran war, or the Operation Epic Fury, however you want to phrase it. Don't really care. It doesn't really matter. The president framing exactly what's going on, what the objectives were, the progress that's been made, and making it very clear to the American people it was a sales pitch. It was a sales pitch. It was trying to explain the current state of the operation to Americans, to American companies in the markets, and to Europe, and also kind of as a more silent threat to the Iranians. So here was the president talking about the progress made.
Thanks to the progress we've made, I can say tonight that we are on track to complete all of America's military objectives shortly, very shortly. We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. In the meantime, discussions are ongoing. Regime change was not our goal. We never said regime change, but...
Now, this upset a lot of people that he said this. That the president of the United States, again, the way that the words are used in description of certain things, the connotation, meaning how words are used in context, is a little bit different from the president to Secretary of State Marco Rubio, to Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, to the Vice President J.D. Vance. And this gives a lot of people dyspepsia because they're like, well, there's this combined focus that's totally disheveled and it's chaotic and no one knows what's going on and it's really, really terrible. I don't think so. I don't think so. Now, this didn't stop the return of the fact checkers. We've been waiting for this for years. The fact checkers that were a hallmark of Trump administration one, when Trump would come out and say, a lot of people are saying that I like ice cream, but I'd much rather have a good steak. And then like the Washington Post say, actually, fact check, no one likes ice cream or steak, and Donald Trump is Hitler. Well, we've returned. We now again have the fact checkers of foreign policy, affiliate news analysts who are desperately trying to keep people watching affiliate news. Now, it's not working, but I want you to hear, just, for the sake of it, how silly some of the fact-checking here sounds. It's nitpicking to the extreme.
President Trump made a number of claims in his primetime address last night, and we're giving a few of the bigger claims a fact check.
Yes, exciting.
So let's start with what he said about regime change.
Regime change was not our goal. We never said regime change, but regime change has occurred because of all of their original leaders' death.
Israel's airstrike on the first day of the war killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. However, the
Okay, I pronounce names bad, but I never go Ayatollah, ravioli, holy guacamole. I'm not that bad, for the record. But anyway, yes. The first strike of the air, Al Khamenei, oofed, indeed.
New leader, his son, Mojtaba, is seen as even more hardline than his father, and the paramilitary Revolutionary Guard continues to exercise firm control over the country. Okay,
I don't mind the fact-checking, to be honest with you, because that's part of my job. I do a little fact-checking here with y'all. Media accountability is important. It's one of the things we do. You're going to see me do a little bit of it later. But right now, if you're going to do this kind of thing, especially after it hasn't been done for a while, don't embarrass yourself, sweetheart. First of all, Mojtaba Khomeini, not Mojtaba Jimbaba Khomeini. Anyway, Mojtaba Khomeini has still not been seen. The voice recording that was put out has already been discredited as being actually the voice of Mojtaba. He is the individual. Al Khomeini did not want to be the next supreme leader because he is gay. He has maybe one leg, maybe, and is at this point thought either to be still in a serious medical coma or dead. No. And as far as the IRGC, they're not a paramilitary group. They are considered to be the core military function of the Iranian regime. And no, they don't have firm control over the country. We've been playing clip after clip after clip after clip of the border regions, which are falling to paramilitary and guerrilla attacks, both with the Kurds, as well as some uprisings in Iran's south and in the eastern region, next to some of the multi-ethnic groups next to Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Next, the president claimed the U.S. doesn't need oil from the Middle East.
We're now totally independent of the Middle East, and yet we are there to help. We don't have to be there. We don't need their oil.
The U.S. imports less than 10% of our oil from the Middle East. However, we do live in a global market. So if the supply of Middle Eastern oil is cut off to other nations, that sends the price of oil and gasoline surging here in the U.S.
But the president didn't say that, though. If you're going to fact check the president, then fact check the stuff the dude says. And there were things that he said during his address that you might take some issue with, by all means. Every American has the freedom to be skeptical of the things that any elected official, Republican, Democrat, populist, traditionalist, libertarian, socialist, whatever, no matter who your elected leaders are, you have the right as an American to be critical and to be unconvinced by messages given from your leaders. Absolutely, you have that right. It's one of the important parts of this republic. But if you're going to get out there and perform some independent journalismic fact-checking service, and you can't even get the fact-checking part right, no, the United States does not get its oil from the Middle East. He's correct when he says that. The United States does not need the oil of the Middle East. And going, well, actually, it's a global economy, and if France wants to buy oil, and then the over here and there. No, you don't make excuses. If there's a plot hole in a movie, and I say, hey, it makes absolutely no sense that the characters of the movie had no idea, and then you start making up writing and things that weren't even in the movie to explain it, that's called writing for the director or writing for the author. It's a logical fallacy in when you debate these kind of things. You're not supposed to hypothetical on top of the hypothetical. That's what's going on here. You don't go like we're all connected in the circle of life and lift Simba up into the air. No. And by the way, the president of the United States, as I also said yesterday, made it clear, the oil prices are going up because we're fighting in the Middle East. We're very well aware of this. Here was the president.
Many Americans have been concerned to see the recent rise in gasoline prices here at home. This short-term increase has been entirely the result of the Iranian regime launching deranged terror attacks against commercial oil tankers in neighboring countries that have nothing to do with the conflict.
The president has made it clear. He's never once avoided this, by the way. He's never said, no, actually, it's Joe Biden. He's made it clear, the oil prices are going up because the regime's been firing on the Strait of Hormuz, which is correct. And it's why here in a couple of minutes, we've gotten some of the data actually now coming in to where I can report this with a little more surety here and feel comfortable of the news that we're sharing, that the Iranian southern city ports and perhaps one of the islands, that's the part I'm still kind of waiting on some of the updates for, are under direct attack at the moment along the Strait of Hormuz. Essentially, what appeared to be some kind of an attempt to remove Iran's ability to contest the strait whatsoever, because Iran's not the only country bordering the Strait of Hormuz. Otherwise, it would be called the Gulf of Iran, which it ain't. Now, that brings us over to a couple of other pieces of news here. Radio crew, sorry to send you to commercial right after, at least on one of our stations, there's some severe weather alerts, but the FCC clock waits for no man. We're going to continue on the live stream here. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, in other news, the Vice President of the United States has done, I would say, a pretty decent job so far of making it clear that Americans want results, not a ton of press conferences and promises. So, as you will recall, the President of the United States made Vance the fraud czar and gave the man the responsibility of going after a lot of these cases of fraud, which are upsetting Americans, justifiably so. So, according to a post right after noon, April 2nd, that being today, United States Attorney Bill Asalee says, quote, in coordination with the task force to eliminate fraud, that's J.D. Vance's task force, federal law enforcement executed several arrests and search warrants in the Los Angeles area this morning, targeting hospice and healthcare fraud. Operation Never Say Die, shaken, not stirred. Anyway, involves 11 defendants who engaged in fraud totaling more than $50 million. Those arrested today will appear in federal court this afternoon. A press conference with more details is happening shortly. Vance quoted this by saying, our task force isn't wasting any time cracking down on fraud. This morning in the LA area, Fed law enforcement taking down fraudsters who stole more than $50 million from Americans by defrauding healthcare and hospice systems. Here was Dr. Oz giving kind of an update on this a little bit later in the day.
We believe half of them are fraudulent. Half of the 1,800 prospectors should not be in business if we are able to identify the red flags. And that's what we're basing these numbers on. These are not random assumptions. World experts at CMS say if you've got 100% or near survival, certainly if you've got a survival over 50% for a population that's supposed to have passed in 6 months, you've got a problem. If you're clustered in the same buildings as other crooks, if you're sharing employee numbers and license numbers, if you've got a small number of people, less than 50 members, you do that because you can hide what's really going on when they're small because you don't have reporting obligations.
He's making it clear, no matter where you are, no matter how big, how small, we're looking over your stuff and we're coming after you. By the way, this is one of the nice uses of AI. This is one of the things that AI was built to do, to analyze large amounts of data and process it and put up a couple of flags for people to look. Now, there was a comment a couple of minutes ago from NGKI5 in the comments who said, well, since that one Minnesota dude got 1 year and a day for $250 million, these guys might get about a week each, which, yeah, that's quality. Now, let's dig into this a little bit. What do I mean by hospice fraud? What is hospice fraud? Hospice, wait, providing care and you're just letting them die when you get there? Oh, no. Essentially, in California, here's what's going on. Gladwin and Almelu Gill, I'll pronounce it like the CBS fact checker, were arrested for allegedly fraudulently billing Medicare for $7.5 million. They were running a hospice service with a survival rate of over 97%. Now, I don't know if you know this, but you're not really supposed to have a super high survival rate in hospice. Because people kind of go on hospice care to, Steve, to die. Yeah, survey says. So, kind of weird. We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial. Don't go anywhere. A lot more news to cover tonight. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. All of the other fraud that's being talked about, all of the other news currently circulating, you're not seeing this headline. It made the New York Times. It was even mentioned in the last vestiges of the NPR publication. It's something that yours truly had the sheer pleasure of covering the initial reports on last year. In fact, exactly 1 year ago. None of the Democrats right now who are currently trying to run kind of slam dunk campaigns on Attorney General Pam Bondi or Elizabeth Warren crying war crimes, the president's playing bridge. None of them are talking about what is truly one of the largest and most insidious pieces of fraud in recent years. Have you ever wondered why the Democrats are so obsessed with AIPAC and Israel and the idea that, they're foreign dollars, which again, although it has been investigated before, not in this case foreign dollars, ActBlue, which is the largest donation apparatus. You have two major funding platforms for elections to donate. You have on the right, WinRed, which is where you go to the app and you donate to Republicans, and then they take your money and then they can disperse it out as necessary. In some cases, you can donate to individual candidates. The same with ActBlue. ActBlue is the left's social media, website-based online system donation center, where they take in a ton of donations, and then they spread that out through the Democrat Party, through the Democratic National Committee. And I had reported a year ago that ActBlue Well, they were reportedly taking a bunch of foreign donations, which you're not allowed to do. Foreign dollars are not allowed in United States elections. And then they were like converting them into gift cards, do not redeem, and then passing that kind of stuff out as campaign contributions to Democrats. They were kind of laundering the foreign dollars. And Congress said, and James Comer said, Chuck Grassley in the Senate gave a slightly more elderly, And then they brought ActBlue before Congress. And ActBlue said, well, yeah, maybe we didn't do as much vetting as we were supposed to do on those foreign dollars, the donations that said, we promise we're not from Egypt or India. But, we didn't know. And the Sarah McLachlan, music kind of kicked in, and then that was supposedly the end of it. Well, that's just not the case. Just not the case at all. According to, of all places, the New York Times, ActBlue may have misled Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, under oath, that would be called perjury on vetting foreign donations. And who's warning about this? ActBlue's own lawyers. So according to the article, the Democrat fundraising group is facing investigations from the Justice Department and congressional Republicans ahead of midterm elections. That's really, really, really not when you want your group investigated. Now, why are they being investigated? Because in early 2025, a law firm working for ActBlue, the Democrat fundraising behemoth, delivered the organization a warning. The kind of warning that ActBlue said that it never received. What was this warning? Well, they said, hey, you probably should be asking those who download ActBlue from third-party apps like Apple Pay, PayPal, Venmo, you should probably check their passport information, voter ID, to check they're actually American citizens, because if they're not, that is super duper alley-hooper illegal. Yeah, you're not allowed to do that. Now, ActBlue, when they went before Congress, said, we didn't know, no one told us. And they kind of threw their lawyers under the bus. Yeah, you really can't do that. You really, really, really cannot do that. Now, here's where things get pretty fun. Federal election law prohibits foreign citizens or people who are not permanent residents from donating directly to federal candidates or political action committees. ActBlue also funds quite a few PACs. Lying or obstructing to Congress, again, this is according to the New York Times, is a crime. Now, the reason this is extra special is because the lawyers' warnings to ActBlue appear to know, or I should say, appear to cite many of the individuals donating to ActBlue from foreign countries already having been communicated to by ActBlue, meaning that ActBlue would have had to go to those foreign donors and solicit donations from them. There's also evidence to suggest that ActBlue may have seen that foreign countries were downloading the ActBlue app because the app stores are not the same from country to country, and that different IP addresses may have logged in. So you have someone logging in from France or from Russia or India or Qatar and then donating a bunch of money. ActBlue would have, almost been all of the blind. We're talking Helen Keller with a blindfold and a scarf wrapped around her head in order to have missed this one. So right in the middle of midterm year, one of the biggest election fraud and funding scandals. And by the way, don't just take my word for it, from Lachlan Markey, who is a Foreign Agent Registration Act monitor. This is his job. He said an amazing, amazing official statement. He said the memos did not identify any specific illegal contributions. They suggested that the scope of any potential problems was unclear. Kimberly Peeler Allen, the chairwoman of the ActBlue Board of Directors, said in an interview that less than 1% of contributions from the 2024 election cycles had signs, signs that they ignored, had signs they were from foreign countries. That is an amazing thing to put in a statement. 1% of the 2024 cycle of ActBlue contributions, 1%, that's $38 million. Between $30 and $38 million coming in that may have some signs it was donated from foreign entities, and you looked the other way, Vice President Vance, I know another place that your particular fraud task force needs to be looking. Now, right before the radio crew leaves and we continue on with the live stream, we haven't even gotten to the Iran stuff yet. We haven't gotten to Democrats trying to take a really weird victory lap and ignoring all of this. The Attorney General of Colorado is really upset with the Colorado Appeals Court, which has now overturned the prison sentence of Tina Peters. Tina Peters is the former Colorado County Clerk who was convicted in a scheme to breach voting systems in search of evidence of election fraud in 2020. Essentially, Tina Peters noticed there were a series of irregularities in the election results in Colorado on a couple of things. And so she ended up trying to look through some of the voting systems to double check a couple of things. And then Colorado, as you may recall, came down really, really hard on her. And the Democrat administration tried to lock her away as long as they could. And the Court of Appeals today pardoned her. Radio crew, sorry, we have to send you off. We're going to continue on the live stream, youtube.com/Daily Signal. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. All right. We're going to continue on the live stream now, unabated, no longer any distractions from us over here. So Phil Weiser, who is the Attorney General of the state of Colorado, he is really upset about this. And he issued a statement. Now, again, guys, I'm begging you, whenever there is a jury or someone who issues some kind of a statement or a court of appeals that accepts something, if you are an attorney general, not like the chief executive, not even a congressperson, if you're the attorney general, the one who is supposed to be charged with upholding the law, like that's your job, you are basically supposed to be the chief law enforcement officer of that jurisdiction. Not the Ketanji Brown Jackson jurisdiction, where if you're Canadian, you become a U.S. citizen if you vacation at Disney World. No, on Colorado's jurisdiction, don't get out there and make the same kind of stupid, nonsensical statements that Phil Weiser, Attorney General of Colorado, did today. So from the Attorney General, quote, regarding the Colorado Court of Appeals upholding Tina Peters' conviction for election tampering, again, that's not the case here. They overturned her prison sentence. He says, quote, the original sentence that the court imposed on Tina Peters for illegally tampering with election equipment was fair and appropriate. So he comes right out saying they should have locked her away forever. The Court of Appeals raised concerns about the length of the sentence and asked a district court judge to reevaluate the sentence. She's in prison because of her own criminal conduct to prove false claims of voter fraud about the 2020 elections, and she has not shown any remorse for her actions. And then this is the part of the statement that's just really, it shows that you don't care about the people of Colorado. You're just mad. Like you're just an angry, middle-aged, leftist, Jennifer Welch, Rachel Maddow, screeching into the air, bitter old hag. Quote, whatever happens with her sentence, Tina Peters will always be a convicted felon who violated her duty as Mesa County Clerk, put other lives at risk, piss off, and threatened our democracy. Oh, just stunning, brave. Nothing will remove that stain. My dude, you're a stain. No. Don't do this kind of nonsense. Say we respect the Court of Appeals decision. We remain committed to making sure that every case is prosecuted, everyone is held to justice, blah, 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 blah. I don't know what it is with attorney generals believing that their position is not exciting enough that they now have to go out and do big, huge political statements every day of the week. I don't really particularly enjoy this when Republicans do this either. I don't. You say, what's your evidence for this? I have argued with Republican attorneys general and Democrat attorneys general, whose numbers I have, and I'll argue over statements that they're doing that have nothing to do with their job. I don't like that. Do the job you're supposed to do. Whatever this nonsense is, you're wasting everybody's time. Now, this does bring us to the Democrat victory lap, which is the ultimate form of cringe. Because the Democrats don't want to talk about this unless you're the Attorney General of Colorado. They do not want to talk about ActBlue. Because if they actually mention the fraud on their own side, and again, this comes amidst a series of all of these various voter fraud arrests. Again, individuals who are arrested with sealed and filled out ballots in their own homes. individuals who are trying so hard to push against voter ID, and your main funding apparatus is back under serious investigation for foreign funding interference in elections? Yikes. You know, if I was Jasmine Crockett or Elizabeth Warren or Adam Schiff, I'd be trying to deflect right now too. So Representative Jasmine Crockett, who got spanked in her own Senate election by discount slightly gayer Pete Buttigieg, has now strolled out to issue a statement on Pam Bondi getting canned. And she's decided to announce that the real reason that Bondi's gone is because she's super corrupt. No. No. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. Anyway, Jasmine Crockett. Pam Bondi has been a complete failure as Attorney General. She has not taken justice seriously, not for 1 second. She's been complicit in corruption and weaponized the Department of Justice, and all while leading the cover-up of the Epstein files. Thank you very much, Jasmine Crockett. No one axed. Thrilling stuff from Jasmine's office. Good luck to you on that one, by the way. By the way, as we pointed out yesterday on the show, Democrats and weird members of the sort of populist isolationist side of kind of the right, not really, that are arguing that Trump is now going to end the war in Iran to cover up the Epstein files, which I was told we were going to do the forever war because of the Epstein file. Things keep changing. Anyway, Adam Schiff did the same kind of nonsense and said Pam Bondi oversaw an unprecedented weaponization of the Justice Department that brought our nation's rule of law to its knees. Ooh. Same kind of nonsense. J.B. Pritzker, he's mad about something else. J.B. Pritzker is trying to do kind of a different dunk on the President of the United States, saying that the federal government doesn't need to fund daycare, that we don't need to spend all of our money like Zoran Mamdani is in New York funding daycare. He's really, really super duper ultra extremely mad about it. And this finally brings us to the Iran stuff, because we've got Elizabeth Warren and James Carville. So I don't know if you want to call this a distraction. I don't know if you want to call this a mental collapse. I'm going to be really upfront with you. Right now, here in the country, people hate Congress. They think that it sucks. Both sides of the aisle. People are very, 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 very unenthusiastic about the Republican House and Senate, and they are more unenthusiastic about the Democrats. So poll after poll over the last week has shown that Republicans do not consider any form of trust in the Democrat side of Congress. I think their priorities are really in the wrong place. Also, voters don't believe that Republicans have their priorities in Congress in the right place. And so the worst thing to do now would be to go out and brag about midterms. I'm not joking. Bragging about the midterms in the first part of the year is a very, very, very dumb move. Because fate, the good Lord, has a way of turning those things upon their own spears. But lest I stand in his way, James Carville waltzed out to go on a particularly bonkers rant over this very thing. Here you go. So, wait a minute. The James Carville, we had to censor this clip, so we put it in a slightly different place because James Carville, the former Bill Clinton strategist, he's got a bit of a potty mouth.
Listen to me, Trump. I'm going to tell you fat ass something. You're getting ready to get the living crap kicked out of you. You don't know because they haven't really told you. And let me tell you something. They're going to start breaking the news to you kind of gently, and you're going to sit there and wonder what it feels like to be punched in the mouth by Mike Tyson. But you won't know, because it's quite one thing to imagine what it's like to get punched in the mouth by Mike Tyson. It's another thing to actually get punched in the mouth by Mike Tyson.
Now, for those of you who aren't following at home, don't feel bad. The man's insane. You ever want to be punched in the mouth by Mike Tyson, you bleepity bleep? Mike Tyson, then dude, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
And that's what's going to happen to you in November. Now, let me tell you let's talk about your future, your post-November future.
Okay. So I guess the first part, really exciting. First big point, Trump's going to get punched in the mouth by Mike Tyson. Got it. Exciting, stellar, not at all crazy. Definitely doesn't make me want to call a trusted adult. Let's talk about after November. All right.
First, people are not going to return your phone calls. They're going to correctly think you yesterday. Yeah, they'll say, well, he's got 2 years left. He can do damage. No one gives a about him.
Okay. A little bit of a fact check here, because we're doing that now. To be clear, it's a weird thing to fact check, but I think it's fun. The President of the United States, there are entire articles out right now from the major media outlets who are upset that President Trump has essentially given his actual cell phone, his personal cell phone number, to a bunch of people. And the White House organizes little micro exclusives in which a lot of people will call the President of the United States and be like, hey, Johnny's like, hey, what's up, Peter? Peter Ducey. Peter, over at Fox, what do you need? And Peter will say, hey, are you getting ready to can Pam Bondi? Like, yes, gonna announce it here shortly. Bye-bye, Pamela. And then Ducey got up on Fox and reported it, and that's kind of how we led into our earlier coverage today. There are so many people with the president's number. And again, it's a weird thing to say no one's going to, pick up your call, no one's going to be on the phone. This is genuinely the most transparent to the press administration we've ever seen in this country. There are supposed to be these closed press events that the White House and top administration officials takes care of that doesn't have the press peeking in every door. Those closed press events are not closed press at all. At all. And I'm not just saying that because I've been invited to the White House Correspondents' Dinner here in a couple weeks. That's just a little something extra. I'm saying that like no one is going to care who Trump is after the midterm anymore, though. I don't know if that's really the point to make. I mean, even if that were true, I mean, okay, I guess.
The Democrats are going to investigate you to no end. I would like to introduce you to Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, D. Rhode Island.
I love this. I love this so much. So first of all, bringing up Sheldon Whitehouse, who is about as exciting as Squidward tentacles from SpongeBob. I also appreciate that the real thing is, oh man, if the walls are going to close in, they're going to investigate you.
I believe this is the beginning of the end.
I do too.
It's really the beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end.
He may be feeling the walls closing in on him.
All the walls closing in on him.
Here we go. Yeah, the wall's closing in. It's all over. Here, the 815th time we're going to hear this.
Because it is a lot of people's view. By the way, and Congressman Jeffords and Senator Schumer, they're going to go down to the White House on November 10th. And then you're going to have some stiff photo of them sitting there talking about collegiality and cooperation. Believe that bull. Then they're going to start going after you. Then they're going to start figuring out where all the money stolen is. Then they're going to go after you stupid jackass kids and their spouses and all the other bullshit that you see. And they're going to investigate out of you. And then when it comes to this stuff you're doing in Iran, I got to tell you, you're getting really, really, really close to war crimes here. You're probably going to cross the line. And the one thing that Democrats are going to insist on in the 2028 election is that if you're indicted by the international courts, and I think it's in The Hague or Hague or somewhere in the Netherlands, we're going to protect your ass. We're not going to protect you.
Okay, so that unhinged rant, the reason we do show you these is this is considered one of the chief political strategists on the left. That's what they're going with. So we started out with Mike Tyson, little Mike Tyson to begin things right off the bat. And then we get over to, they're going to investigate you again. And then they're going to go after your kids. Okay, neat. Now we get into war crimes, because this is where Elizabeth Warren is. Now we're getting to exciting, this is the big time. We're going to level right into it. So the United States, the president has relayed that the biggest bridge in Iran comes tumbling down, never to be used again, much more to follow. That was the president of the United States, relaying that I want to make sure I get the name of this right. The B1 bridge in Karaj, reportedly the highest bridge in West Asia, which I I mean, it looks like it's about almost the height of the Green Bay overpass. That's a little bit high up, sort of, kind of. That's the best thing I can describe it. Maybe in Indianapolis, the interchange over 465 and I-74, that's about how tall it is. So, oh yeah, great engineering going on in West Asia. But anywho, President Trump has hit this bridge. And there are some people that are very, very, very grumpy about it. They're very grumpy. How dare the President of the United States hit this bridge? It's terrible. I can't believe it. I think that producer Jen put a clip of this in here for us. The video of the bridge falling down My Fair Lady. So there's the puff of smoke, the beautiful bridge. Are you impressed? Look at that. It's got almost kind of a suspension thing going on. There you go. And the president says, the biggest bridge comes tumbling down. Make a deal before it's too late, or I'm going to beat the crap out of all your bridges. I mean, that's just... very, very Trump, and I understand there's a lot of criticisms and concern. Now, first of all, there has been this allegation by Iranian media that the Americans struck the bridge, and then there were rescue crews that rushed onto the scene, and then the United States and the Israelis struck them too. No, it wasn't open to the civilian population yet. So, no. And also, I'm just going to be really clear. I know there's a lot of people that are upset about this bridge. Again, Elizabeth Warren is super, super, super mad. I mean, like, Elizabeth is super mad, like super duper war crimes. And again, you heard James Carville say, they're going to send you to The Hague. You're going to war crime stuff. Just no. But anywho, as far as this conversation about the bridge, hey, now they have the B1 and the B2 bridge. They got two bridges now. So, I'm kind of a gift from the President of the United States, if you think about it. Now, on to some other news here, because the United States does appear to be engaging in a series of strikes along the southern coastline of Iran, the Strait of Hormuz. Before we get to that, two updates on the Iranian side of things. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has claimed to have hit the Oracle data center in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. I still have yet to see any information confirming that the UAE systems regarding the large Oracle tech giant have had any problems. And first of all, based on the last check, which I ran at 8:02, kind of a ping of the Oracle systems, UAE Central, that's in Abu Dhabi, UAE East in Dubai, both of those two systems, and then there's like a smaller UAE pocket. All of those Oracle systems, all 12 of the checks for all three of those systems are online. Nothing has been touched. So we've got, the fake, phony course. Also, Iran's announced they're going to be targeting all the bridges everywhere. Unfortunately, they're not going to be able to target the Francis Scott Key Bridge because our own boats take that out and they don't rebuild it. I mean, I guess if they could hit the Wildlife Bridge in California, Gavin Newsom, And then how are butterflies going to cross the interstate? Sorry. Anyway, so yeah. Then also, Iranian media has confirmed that Jamal Kharazi, the head of Strategic Council on Foreign Relations, was seriously wounded in a strike on his home. His wife was killed in the strike. Additionally, there are other reports that a couple of IRGC and Basij officials have also been taken out here in the last couple of hours. The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Tamagotchi, the old CBS announcer name style there, says, quote, striking civilian structures, including unfinished bridges, will not compel Iranians to surrender. So when your foreign minister comes out and announces that there was no one on the bridge to begin with anyway, and so there were no rescue crews, it wasn't like a big civilian strike and not a war crime. I guess Elizabeth Warren has now deleted her comments about the destroying the bridge being a war crime. There's this really bad interpretation of the rules of war, which again, the rules of war are the person conducting the war, just to be clear. But anyway, in the rules of war here, according to the Geneva Convention, you're not supposed to strike some kinds of civilian infrastructure. Guys, bridges are not one of those things. Now, you're not allowed to strike. Now, you're not supposed to be allowed. Again, because only the United States is really bound by the rules of war. No one else follows them. But the United States is supposed to not be allowed to strike a bridge in which civilians are fleeing across the bridge. But that's not a thing anyway. Now, striking a bridge does mean severing supply lines. And yeah, all countries at war sever supply lines. Starving the enemy of supplies is kind of one of the ways that you win against an opponent. And, you know, cue the more you know shooting star going across the screen. So this brings us over to Bandar Abbas. The airstrikes currently reported in the Strait of Hormuz drawings that you've seen. It comes up to that little point. You have the United Arab Emirates, which kind of rides up in Dubai into that point, that bend in the Strait of Hormuz. Bandar Abbas is right across the strait in this low point where there's that shallow point where boats are kind of channeled into this one little 30-mile stretch. Bandar Abbas is the Iranian port city where Iran's been harassing vessels. This has been the place where Iran has been doing a lot of its shenanigans to try to keep the port closed. Now, from a couple of Turkish reports here, the Görüntü Iranin, which is a Turkish media affiliate, fancy, reported just a couple of hours ago, and I want to make sure that I get this particular clip correct, that yeah, Bandar Abbas is in fact being struck. So some lovely smoke there, very fancy. See if we can get you a better clip, a better look here. The southern Iran kind of coastline attacks. Yeah, I don't know if the crappy music is necessary. But some smoke, you got, the smoke rising, these kind of particular attacks. Now, there are reportedly some rallies in Bandar Abbas condemning Israeli-American aggression and supporting Iran. Here is this particular suggestion. Now, here's the problem. The protest video right here, that is not only not in Bandar Abbas, but that is also at a completely different time and, well, it's obviously a different place in a different time as well. That's a couple of months old. In early January of this year, there were rallies, multiple demonstrations against the regime in the port city. We don't have any information as to a rally currently underway. Even pro-regime individuals, so to speak. There's like a suggestion that Abbas Araki, he's once again mingling with the people. You got foreign leaders that are out there among the crew. There was a pro-regime rally in Tehran, but we don't have any information suggesting that the port city in Iran is seeing a lot of people protesting the United States and Israel and stuff like that. People are usually taking a lot of cover during these kind of strikes. So interesting stuff there for sure. We'll keep an eye on this, at least as it moves forward. It appears that the Trump administration is continuing this is kind of your last route out. Make a deal now, or you just may not be here for much longer. All right, that said, there are a couple of things I wanted to address on the mail time side of things, and then we'll shuffle out. Have a wonderful Thursday. Tomorrow, we will have a shorter show. All of my producers will be off of work because it's going to be Good Friday. So you will be stuck with just me for Good Friday, our show here on the Tony Kinnett Cast at 7 p.m. Eastern. That said, we're going to go out for a little bit of mail time, and we're going to wrap things up for the evening here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. Good stuff indeed. Mail time. Mail time. Mail time.
On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
All right, first question I got a little bit earlier this morning, and it actually it comes from a dear friend over on the email side of things by the name of Josh, asking, what do I think about the European Union sending over aid, or announcing they're going to be sending over aid to the Cubans? So the European Union got out in front of the of the world, and announced from the European Commission, quote, "The EU stands with the people of Cuba in their hour of need." This is at 6:51 a.m. this morning. "We are stepping up our humanitarian aid to Cuba to help deliver food and safe drinking water, and to provide logistical support to humanitarian partners delivering urgent relief to the most vulnerable." Here's what I believe. So first and foremost, the European Union delivering anything effectively and consistently, not exactly in their history. If they only do deliver food and water and then send officials aboard, or I should say on land, making landfall on Cuba to deliver the food and water directly to the Cuban people, I don't have an issue with this. I don't have an issue with this at all. But if they are just turning this food and water over to the Cuban communist regime officials, then just like we've seen with Hamas and the international aid coming in, it's going to get confiscated and repurposed. I think that the United States should absolutely be searching vessels going in, and the EU acting against the interests of the United States. This is why you see the public opinion of NATO in the US right now falling very, very, very quickly. Europe has kind of worn out its welcome here, and it's their own famdalt. So that aside, that's kind of my take on it. I'm still waiting to see. I don't want to announce anything up and early. So that said, a couple of mail time questions this evening and a couple of super chats to start off. You guys don't have to give super chats to us. You don't have to throw money our way at all. Very, very kind of those of you that do. But from Sandy, a $10 super chat this evening. It said, "Tony, you have finally changed your mind on the filibuster. I'm here rather at just the news. John Solomon is phenomenal, but he has a writer by the name of Ben or Bill Guido, absolute Trump hate." Oh, I think her message may have gotten cut off. Either way, I know John Solomon, good friend, nice guy. Love seeing him at conferences. The last time that I got a chance to sit down and talk with John Solomon over at Just the News, I believe was during a Moms for Liberty conference, and I got to sit down with him and Sebastian Gorka, and I got to have a couple of late night cups of coffee because, you know, we never sleep, and talking about the general shifting of the landscape. One of the things that Sebastian Gorka did talk to me about was the filibuster at the time. Funnily enough, you should mention that. I have come around to the idea of getting rid of the filibuster. Yeah. Now, I'm not for knocking things down or tearing things down just to tear them down. And I really do not want Congress to start passing bills willy-nilly all the time. I don't want Congress to become that kind of a thing. But if getting rid of the filibuster will be the only thing to get the American people to care enough to participate in Senate primaries, in House primaries, and get better congressmen into office, to take back power from, currently we have an outsized in power executive branch and an outsized in power judicial branch, which is trying to slap the presidency. Congress is doing, you guessed it, nothing. So yeah, I'm not really against the idea anymore. And yeah, my mind changes. And I try to be really transparent with you guys about when my mind does change and why. The minute that I start telling you that I never change my mind, or that I constantly and consistently know everything and will make up things to give you an explanation, find a different show. The minute that I also start being consistently wrong in predictions and things, when I do make predictions, find another show. So far, scoreboard seems to be holding. That said, very kind comment from the YouTube member, Rick Edelman. Tony, you were correct in your earlier broadcast about the Department of Justice getting more into the PR realm. You need to tell the folks what you're doing as you're doing it. Yeah, I mean, for lack of a better term, every agency now in the executive branch is in the PR business because we're all so connected, and there's so much social media where anyone can be a journalist. That also means anyone can be an analyst and a commentariat. That's not a bad thing. That just means you can get rumors and misinterpretations and just outright bullcrap trending around the world all the time. And that can really severely impact a lot of operations. I had an argument with a guy today, kind of on a weekly segment that I do over on a TV network side of things, asking about kind of the PR explanations not always being the same. There's a lot of access to American media and to the American executive that there really hasn't been before. From Libby Priest, has Hegseth been let go? No, absolutely not. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, has not been let go at all. Now, I do know that he, well, according to a couple of sources, their Army Chief of Staff General Randy George has been asked perhaps to step down and take immediate retirement because Hegseth's not exactly fond of the Chief of Staff of the Army's decisions and his kind of way that he handles the brass. I have no comment right now. There's also a possibility that they are getting rid of perhaps General David Hodney, which I did kind of know about, who leads the Transformation and Training Command, I believe. So I don't really have a lot of comment on staff changes at the military level. That's for some personal reasons, some professional reasons as well. I would say hang on, but no, is Hegseth out? No, he's not. Hegseth can act normal. Now, again, he can get out there and make some boisterous statements, but he also knows how not to be podium Barbie. Being podium Barbie and then saying things that are flat wrong and get the president in hot water, people do not care for that at all, whatsoever. Let me see this. I see from Dasha Burns over at Politico, the White House bureau chief, she suggested that he being the president of the United States is considering more changes to his cabinet. That was at 7:44, about a half over, let's say about 40 minutes ago. Sorry, I had to do a little quick math looking up at the clock there. Dasha suggests that the president has expressed frustration and disappointment with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and Labor Secretary Lori Chavez-DeRemer. An administration official told Politico, he's very angry and he's going to be moving people. No final decisions have been made on Chavez, DeRemer, and Lutnick, and Trump has contemplated firing people and then backed off before. As those of you who have been around the show know before, while I think that Howard Lutnick has done a surprisingly great job with some aspects of the Department of Commerce, and guys, Department of Commerce has a lot of moving parts, like the Department of Homeland Security, which has FEMA in it and elements of the Coast Guard. The Department of Commerce has NASA. It has the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It has a lot. Department of Commerce has a ton that has been rolled into that administration. And we've talked before here on the air that we've talked a consistent amount here on the air that I think that Lutnick has done a pretty good job of looking internally and clearing a lot of the political decisions inside the departments, like members of the NOAA saying, yeah, we have data that shows climate change, the numbers are really not showing it, but we're not going to show those numbers, which is something we reported on the show here a couple of months back. Howard Lutnick's done a good job on those things. On the trade thing, yeah, I'm sorry. I know we have a lot of pro-tariff people here on the show, but the way a lot of the tariff stuff was argued by Peter Navarro and Howard Lutnick, which ended up getting smacked down because, again, while the president can make some arguments regarding tariffs, and they can be really effective, then making everything a national emergency thing, no. Howard Lutnick made a mistake, so did Peter Navarro. Again, there's a reason you don't hear very much from Peter Navarro anymore. I wouldn't be surprised to see Lutnick go. Again, I think he's done some good things. I'm not sure. I'm not surprised that he's expressing some frustration with Lutnick, though, because, again, a lot of Americans are frustrated at the economy now because it was booming in Trump 1. And now in Trump 2, again, it's doing a lot better than it gets some of the media credit for. But also, Howard Lutnick has made some suggestions that have not always led to some foreign investment, which, again, there are new foreign investment deals in the United States being announced by the day. I believe there was a Hyundai announcement about, I think, $29 billion today, this afternoon. Producer Jen, I think, shared that with me over in the show notes. I'm going to take a quick glance at that. As for the labor leader, when Trump brought Labor Secretary Lori Chavez-DeRemer up, you guys know I praise the president. Think he's great. Simping for the unions was a retarded decision. Bringing up some union piece of, again, let me be clear, union leadership piece of trash. A lot of people in unions, excellent. You don't have to take my word like I'm simping for those who are in labor unions. You've seen me go up to during the 2024 election talking with the UAW picket line. Again, my dad, former union guy, come from the Midwest, come from a family of guys on the line, factory workers. I understand the arguments for labor unions in a lot of manners. And you also know I despise teachers unions. It's not the same thing. But when it comes to union leadership, who sells out those under them all the time, look, Trump's a very populist president, for better and for worse. And given that he's kind of Bill Clinton, and a lot of economic policy from the 90s, well, yeah, it makes sense that a lot of union leadership would align with him. Lori Chavez DeRemer, though, can go pound sand in the unemployment line for all I care. Union leadership sucks. I don't like her. She should have never been put in the administration. She's done a whole lot of nothing useful for the American people. Piss off. I don't think she's useful. He can get rid of her. Be gone. No thanks. So that said and aside, very briefly, I don't think I have the Hyundai report here in the show notes. So I'll move on to the next point here. Oh, I do actually. From, of all people, Senator Bernie Moreno from Ohio. April 2nd at 3:51 p.m. Hyundai Kia announced $26 billion of investments. Stellantis, $13 billion. Toyota, $10 billion. Mercedes-Benz, $4 billion. Ford, $5 billion. GM, $4 billion. That's his announcement of the since the Liberation Day tariffs. Those are the announced investments from auto companies specifically. Oh, here it is. From the Hyundai leadership today. Hyundai announced it will invest $26 billion in the U.S. over the next 2 years, creating 25,000 new direct jobs. More than 80% of the Hyundai vehicles sold in America will be made in America. All right, there you go. Hey, making sure that we have that kind of stuff in a row and in a line here. All right, last mail time question, then we're going to wrap things up. Thank you very much to producer Daniel for giving us a couple of extra points of data, as you always do, my friend. Last mail time question. From Lisa over on the Discord. Do you think that Attorney General Pam Bondi is going to go to work for the Trump companies? Yeah, I don't think that he or she knows where she's going yet. I'm going to level with you. I don't think that Pam Bondi knows where in the private sector she's going. I mean, she's not like Kristi Noem and going over to the special envoy to the Shield of the Americas, whatever. I don't I don't think she knows. I don't know if she's going to go work for the Trump companies. I have no idea. If you work in D.C. for any amount of time, companies will bend over backwards to give you jobs and special boards because that brings, they think, political and investment clout later on, and oftentimes it does. Special inroads to the administration for maybe future lobbying. I don't think that she knows where she's going. That's just to be pretty upfront and to level it with you. I'm sure things might change between now and tomorrow or Monday. At this point, that's kind of my take on it. I could very much be wrong. That's all speculation, but just the way that I read it, go into the private sector. I don't think that there's actually. I think it's good luck. Hope you find something. I mean, I'll write you a good letter of recommendation. I think that's probably about it. So that all said, have a wonderful evening. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern, just me, for Good Friday. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all, take care.